Well, you started this off, you used the word gaslighting, and, wow. Eric Holder, for people who don't know, Obama's former attorney general. I mean, he's the guy that kind of invented all this. If we get to the fundamental aspects, like I think both of us probably agree at a fundamental level that what we've seen a distortion, a pollution, a weaponization, a politicization of the entire justice system. And the guy that I would point the finger straight at, it's always gone on to some degree, but the person that I would point the finger at that really initiated these fundamental shifts in weaponization that we've seen is none other than Eric Holder. What he did at the DOJ. I always pointed back, he had a thing that a lot of people don't know about. He had the DOJ slush funds. And it's easy to discount something from that long ago, but you can't. Eric Holder was using settlement money from the financial crisis to fund all of the groups that we either see in their current form or in a subsequent, kind of generative form today. And literally using billions of dollars to fund all of the groups, La Raza, you name them, any group that was back in the day, extreme leftist group, he was using taxpayer funds out of that slush fund until it was finally stopped to establish all of these groups. Now, a lot of them don't exist with the exact same name, but they're just a branch off of it's the same people, a new name.
Yes.
All of that originated with Eric Holder. So the idea that this guy is out there saying, that it's going to be Trump, that is the penultimate form of gaslighting. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I guess a couple points. First of all, I think the total settlements amounts were actually around 100 billion.
Ow.
And they were, if you go back and you look at the use of those funds, you can't find it. We do know that not only was he funding the groups, but they were also, the Obama administration was taking that money and funding things that Congress had pulled funding for.
Right.
And then Holder's been very active through his firm. Was it Covington?
Yes.
And that's become a refuge for a lot of people that came out of the DOJ and ended up miraculously at his firm. And then they, went on to engage in their ongoing weaponization.
Right.
And then you mentioned some of the main players, Eisen being one of the paramount ones, McCord at Georgetown being another.
Yeah.
And, these meetings are real, and it's literally weekly phone calls. And the people that comprise this are the obvious folks like Eisen, McCord, Weissman, but they're also every single legal talking head that you see on MSNBC.
Right.
Which, oh, by the way, are all former federal prosecutors.
Yeah.
And all these people, from smart people all the way down to people like Asha Rangak, whatever the heck her name is, that failed former FBI agent, they're all on these calls.
Right.
And so not only are they strategizing, but they're also getting their talking points for the week to then go out on MSNBC. So it's a dual effect. Not only are they working on the current lawfare to take out Trump, that's now kind of failed. They've also been working on preparations for what do they do if and when Trump wins. And they've also been working on their ongoing talking points that, basically pollute the media 24/7 on a weekly basis. No, not at all. And you're exactly right on this multi-pronged attack. I mean, when you go back to Holder once again, if you pollute the DOJ, the downstream effect of that is you pollute the justice system.
Right.
And that's exactly what we saw. And you also see the infiltration of the universities. I mean, the DEI, issues make that readily apparent. But it's also on, as you said, on the constitutional level. The guy, his name escapes me for a second, but the person who originated the theory of the blue shift and was part of the war games for the 2020 election,
right.
He's a constitutional authority I think it's at Ohio or something like that. He's the professor of the entire constitutional department. You got McCord at Georgetown. So these things are not by accident. They slot in there very easily because there's a liberal bias. So it's kind of it's a cozy place to just jump into and then kind of spread their tentacles. But it's done with a very clear agenda. I mean, ultimately, I just see this whole thing as fundamentally attack on the Constitution.
Yes.
With an aim probably mostly at the First Amendment, but still at the Constitution fundamentally, because that's kind of the one thing that's in the way of everything else. Right. And that's what they really, truly, if you cut to the heart of it, Trump's sort of an epitome of those issues, which is why he's being attacked. But fundamentally, it's the Constitution that's really the thing that's in all of their sights right now. Well, as soon as when you mentioned at the start of this, and you mentioned, Elon and Tucker, et cetera, my immediate response was in my head, I'm thinking, well, I'm sure we're going to find out that they have FISAs opened on them.
Right.
And you've got Eric Holder at a current secret court that appointed by Biden.
Right.
Ultimately, it comes down to that these people are always operating from a premise of other people are going to do to them what they would do to those other people. And so it creates kind of this twisted reactionary basis that they would treat us like X. So therefore, we're going to treat them in the same fashion. And it kind of perpetuates and actually escalates their actions, that belief system.
Yeah.
I do think they're legitimately afraid, which I'm grateful for, and I certainly hope that if Trump wins, something actually happens here. Because I think we've talked about this every single time that I've been on, and that is accountability.
Yes.
That there has to be some sort of accountability in some way, shape, or form, or this is never going to stop. Because we keep seeing norms crossed, and once they cross them, they don't go back. There's another line, and Democrats cross that line, and then another line, and they cross that line. It's so easy for us to lose sight of where we actually are right now and how utterly insane everything is, because it's all been by incrementalism. We keep moving the line, the bar forward, 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 or the bar lower, 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 however you want to say it. And here we are. And it's easy to lose sight of the fact that we don't even have a president right now. We have a fake shell, a hollow person of a candidate who's in the race. I mean, that's astonishing of itself, with the media entirely in the bag and a whole lawfare crew that's working, 24 hours around the clock, well funded, to go ahead and prepare both how to, change the outcome of the election. And if that doesn't work, what do they do in the post-election scenario? And all of this is happening in real time while free speech is fully under assault. I think people don't realize how large the numbers are. Effectively, any place that you can fund the illegal immigration, it's being funded. The biggest funders are probably the State Department and USAID. And that's something we've known about for a while. And we're talking billions of dollars directly given to the NGOs. There's a whole network. It's not as if migrants are just walking the 5,000 miles or whatever from Central America. There's a whole line that just escorts them up, either, literally giving them money, giving them food, giving them water, giving them transportation. These are all the NGOs that are working all the way down from Central America, all the way up through Mexico to our border, and then have stations on both sides of the border where they work with the Department of Homeland Security to take the people that come in, house them, and then spread them equidistantly throughout the United States. We looked at it on a congressional district basis, and it's almost uniform with some exceptions in the blue states or in the red states where they're trying to turn them blue. Right. So it's very, very targeted. But FEMA, when that topic came up, there was conflicting information about did FEMA or did FEMA not give them money. And so we thought we'd take a look at that. And sure enough, we were shocked at the numbers. And there's still some discrepancies which we're working on looking at their site. But, it just went in and started clicking on grants. And right away, what do you see? All these grants are made one after the other, primarily to Catholic charities. And Catholic Charities of America. I'm not saying Catholic Charities plural, but literally that's the name, Catholic Charities of America. And they've got all kinds of subgroups, whether it's in Laredo or, just different cities. And huge amounts. And you see a 12 million grant, a 15 million grant, a $20 million grant, a $300,000 grant, everything in between, but just time and time again. And it appears that in 2024, we don't have complete numbers, and I'll get to that in a moment. It's about $650 million in 2024. And in 2023, the numbers are a little more shaded. It's at least, I believe, 350 million, but there's another 415 million that was allocated out of Congress that appears to have flowed through FEMA. It's a little confusing because FEMA has subcategories and they're placing the numbers in different places. But the best read I can get is it's another 415 million on top of the 350 in 2023. So huge numbers. So the idea that FEMA isn't giving money is, forget about that. That's discarded. It's 100% certain. The contracts are right there. You can go to my Twitter feed. You can go to, we'll have the article probably up later today. You can go look at it there. You can just go onto FEMA's site and you'll see what I'm talking about. Yeah. And going back to Karine Jean-Pierre, in her elevation. First of all, I think that was probably a payoff to keep her quiet, move her up, maybe just to keep her there as well. We'll give her that. She won't, she'll shut up. But she got caught yesterday with Peter Doocy when she was kind of debating with him. And, first of all, money's fungible, right? You spend it in one place, it costs you another. It's another area where you can't spend it.
Right.
And she got caught up in this debate with him that was just laughable on the face of it, because we know the money's been spent. And, talking about resources for the current hurricanes, Helene and then Milton, which is pending.
Right.
And trying to pretend that she hadn't just sent 157 million or whatever it was to Lebanon. So here you've got FEMA. What are they doing sending money to Lebanon? What are they doing sending hundreds of millions of dollars to the NGOs that are creating the illegal problem?
Right.
And some of the other programs we looked at, they're pretty hazy in terms of their wording. So I'm pretty confident that there's money coming out of other areas that we can't even completely identify, because you can't get to the underlying programs to see the exact donations. So I'm guessing that our numbers are conservative, and it's actually much worse than that. Well, I don't think it's any coincidence that we really saw the rise of these left-wing groups that sort of sprung out of the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
And, supposedly Epstein's out there taking, credit back in the day for having come up with that idea and structure.
Right.
And, the payout, I forget the exact number, but it was somewhere it was like a 99 or 98% retention. The payout out of the Clinton Foundation and charities was essentially nothing.
Right.
So they're taking in hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's literally a way to, to launder that money and keep it tax free and use it for other purposes. And that spread to these other left wing groups. And the nature of an NGO, first of all, just the name itself, non-governmental organization. Well,
Right.
what are those really? They're nothing more than off the books branches of government. That's what they really are at the heart of it. And, annually we give around 4 billion, I think, to the UN a year, except that's not true, because each of these federal agencies, such as the State Department, USAID, others, they're given a non-discretionary budgets that they can do things as they see fit with those numbers. It's more than double that number that we actually provide to the UN and the UN-related NGOs through that separate kind of off-the-books budget.
Right.
So the amount that we give to the UN directly is more around 8 to 9 billion. And of course, a lot of it is going directly to these NGOs. And that's just another way that these things can be done. Funnel money down to these non-governmental organizations,
Right.
tax-free entities, and let them do all the work that you can accomplish on the face of it at your federal agency, but you're directing it. And, Heritage took a close look at this. And one of the things that they came away with is that these people, just like the media, they're sort of interchangeable. They actually are working directly with the administration. Some of them, they are lobbying the administration for the money. They're able to do that. We need it for X, Y, and Z. And that goes both ways.
Right.
They're all friends with the administration. It's not like these are separate people that are often, kind of operating on their own and they submit a bid. No, these people are almost interchangeable with the different federal agency administrations. That's one of the things that's driving me crazy. As I've been going through this, you realize that the amount of money that is being spent on causes that virtually nobody would support is out of control. And we're talking, as you mentioned earlier, trillions, not billions. And the idea that if you were to slash that and, downsize government, we'd all be paying 50, 70% less in taxes.
Yep.
It is unreal what's going on. When I first got into this, a long time ago, one of the things that jumped out at me that I was really naively surprised about was how many times the name Rockefeller Foundation kept coming up. I couldn't believe it. And in areas that always had to deal with globalism. And I guess I had this naive belief that Rockefeller, et cetera, based on their roots and oil and everything else, there'd be kind of this conservative bent to it. And it was anything but that. I'm talking, when I found this out in 2015 or whatever, but we see this kind of involvement and push over and over and over again. And you mentioned USAID, Samantha Power running that. That's another one, $450 million in 2023 going directly to these NGOs.
Yeah.
I've come to believe there are no organic uprisings.
Me too.
We've got our hands in everything, and of course that not only did it utterly destabilize the Middle East, but it opened the immigration doors, the flood of immigrants into the wave into Europe. And all of these institutions, when you look at the language, so I just went into FEMA and I was taking a look at the language that was in their EFSP program, one of the programs that a lot of the funding came out. And they start off and they say, we're here to help local nonprofit and government social organizations provide food, shelter, supportive services to U.S. citizens, individuals, and families. And then they add a little, so it sounds, oh, okay.
Right, exactly.
Then all of a sudden there's a little tag on at the end in the small print. The program may also receive funding to the National Board for Distribution to local social service organizations to provide humanitarian relief to families and individuals encountered by DHS at the border. Just a little tagline that's hidden down in the sub-language. Well, guess what? That's where half of their budget's going.
Yeah.
And that's how they do these things. And they have a nice sounding name to a program, and then you dig into it and you find there's a little caveat that's hidden that is really almost fundamentally the full agenda of that program. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've been delving into a lot over the last couple of years. And the more I do it, the more frustrated and upset that I get. It's kind of interesting that you've got the Rockefellers at the core of a lot of these things. And, what does that stem to? It stems from oil, the engine on which America ran for so many years. And now we're making this transition. And who are the new people? They're the new people that stand behind big tech, kind of the new engine of America. And there's sort of a hierarchy with a pass down, a little bit of the passing of the torch, you could say, although certainly not entirely. So we're kind of seeing a blending of those two. And those are the same names that we keep seeing over and over and over again. Yeah. And, you mentioned 1912. I mean, that's the same time that we had the shift where we went from using tariffs and making the move into having a corporate tax and having an income tax. The corporate tax was supposed to only be temporary. And of course, that didn't happen. And we now have a dual tax code existing to this day. That all happened at the same time. Well, when you go back to it, I mean, really what you have is you have a dressing up that Marxism, communism has kind of a dirty, as it should, tinge to it. We call it a global new world order. And in theory, I mean, communism sounds kind of good. Everybody's equal and everybody gets to share and kumbaya, it's a neighborhood. And unfortunately, none of that takes human nature into account. Yeah. So, that just turns into the slaughter of millions. So we call it something else. And Soros, like you mentioned, he's been very open about what his goals were. And, the creation of the EU, which is something that, it's still that whether it survives or not, that remains to be seen. There's a lot of reasons why it's in deep trouble. But, that's all part of this, the creation of supranational laws that arc over our Constitution. That is a fundamental aspect of what they're trying to accomplish. The whole shift to a service economy, that was very structured. We were promised that we would, export manufacturing to China, and what we would get in return is high quality service jobs. And what really happened is China got rich, and all these communities that saw their factories shut down, their new service job was, do you want fries with that?
Exactly.
None of that materialized. It was all a giant lie. Right. Under the guise to transfer enormous wealth and impoverish a whole element of society that fundamentally they looked down on and regarded with utter disdain. Yeah. So, that was targeted, that was implemented. It was just a giant lie that got put into place, which all of it keeps coming back to the same element of this need to destroy America. The whole move to bring Marxism to America was put on hold because people like Antonio Gramsci looked at it and said, you're never going to pull it off. Right. Everything's too good there. You're never going to convince American workers to unionize and act on the scale that we need them to because they're too successful. Rather, we need to begin to attack and shape and structure all of the institutions that underpin that, the family, the churches, the legal system, the justice system. Most importantly, perhaps, family's probably most important, but secondarily, schools. We need to infiltrate and slowly change those over time. And that's how you're going to arrive at a place where you can then be more direct and forthright with your goals. And that's, unfortunately, we're at the scary part now where we're now seeing the forthright in your face. Right. You've mentioned it repeatedly that they're not hiding things. And that's exactly correct. They are not hiding things. in part because they're desperate and in part because they don't need to. But either way, we're at this very, very dangerous tipping point. It's a frightening place to be, but we're seeing kind of the final outgrowth of everything that's been going on for decades. Yeah, the best place to kind of drop in and see what we're doing is truthovernews.org, which is its Substack. But if you just truthovernews.org, that's us.
Great.
You want to get us on X, I'm at the Markets Work, Hans is at Hans Monkey, and you can find both of us that way. Awesome. So, well, anyway, congratulations on your new book. Like I said at the start, I can't wait to read it, and I'm very happy for you. Congratulations.